Elias Vance had been looking forward to leaving Santa Barbara since his plane landed. The palm trees and the relentless sunshine felt like a mockery of his exhaustion. At 38, he was a successful New York architect, but success tasted like ash. He just finished a brutal 72-hour design sprint for a luxury housing complex pitch, and all he wanted was the sterile silence of a flight home, away from the demanding wealth of the California coast, and perhaps, finally, a moment to call his wife. He was standing beneath the ornate, wrought-iron canopy of the historic Stearns Wharf parking structure around 10 p.m., waiting for the valet to retrieve his rental when the world dissolved into noise. It wasn't the slow rumble of a distant tremor. It was a vicious, immediate crack that sounded like the earth splitting open. The preliminary quake lasted maybe 20 seconds, but it was enough. The ancient wooden pilings screamed, and the concrete parking apron above his head groaned, then gave way. Elias instinctively dove behind the thick base of a defunct information kiosk. When the dust settled, he was entombed. A jagged slab of rebar-laced concrete blocked his escape, and the ceiling was now a precarious fan of stressed beams hanging above a 7-foot drop into darkness and seawater. "Hello," Elias called out, his voice hoarse with adrenaline. "Is anyone here?" A soft gasp answered him, followed by a grunt of pain. "I'm here," a woman's voice whispered, strained and tight. "My leg!" Elias crawled forward, ignoring the throbbing pain in his shoulder. The air was thick with pulverized cement and the metallic scent of crushed electrical wiring. He found her wedged near the edge of the collapsed walkway, her figure barely illuminated by the faint glow filtering in from a distant street lamp. She was mid-30s, dressed in practical denim and a heavy canvas jacket. Her hands smudged with what looked like dried mud and oil. Her hair, the color of wet sand, was pulled back in a loose braid. "My name is Elias. I'm going to try and move this pipe," he said, assessing the damage. "Serena," she replied, wincing. "Don't touch that. It's holding the rest of the railing up. If it shifts, we lose the only structural integrity we have left." Serena Hayes wasn't supposed to be here. She ran a small, struggling marine conservation nonprofit, and she'd been out late retrieving sensors near the pilings, worried about the sudden storm surge predicted for the weekend. She ducked under the walkway for temporary shelter when the quake hit. For the next 2 hours, trapped in a pocket of debris above the churning black water, they talked. The conversation wasn't about the immediate threat, but about the lives they had left behind. Elias confessed the profound, soul-crushing emptiness of his marriage, a partnership sustained only by shared assets and future retirement plans. He admitted that every success felt meaningless because his passion had died under the weight of investor demands. "I miss drawing for the joy of it," he murmured, his voice cracking. "I used to sketch the old buildings, the lines of the coastline, just for the beauty. Now it's all spreadsheets and glass towers. I haven't seen the sky in months." Serena, despite the escalating pain in her shin, listened intently. She told him about her fierce love for the ocean, the way the deep blue calmed her, and the crushing guilt she carried over her recent divorce, not for ending the relationship, but for how it had isolated her from her teenage daughter, who'd chosen to stay with her father upstate. "I let the ocean swallow me whole," she said softly, leaning her head against the cool concrete. "I used to tell myself I was saving the world, but really I was running away from being a mother. It took this silence, this fear, to realize how much I just want to hear my daughter laugh again." In the claustrophobic darkness, they saw each other with terrifying clarity. They were two strangers, suddenly stripped of their professional armor and societal expectations, revealing wounds that mirrored each other's perfectly. Elias saw in Serena the fierce purpose and grounded warmth his life lacked. Serena saw in Elias the potential for quiet artistic connection that her frantic, science-driven life had squeezed out. It was more than connection. It was immediate, profound recognition. They shared a single bottle of water Elias had in his briefcase, and as their hands brushed, a powerful current of longing shot through the fear. "If we get out of here, Serena," Elias said, his voice low, "I'm not going back to New York. Not yet. I need to know what happens to the person who sees me, truly sees me, for the first time in 10 years. Serena managed a weak smile, her eyes reflecting the distant city lights. "I'd like that, Elias. I think I just found the only reason worth fighting to climb out of this hole." Just then, a beacon of hope sliced through the darkness. The grinding roar of heavy machinery reached them, followed by shouted instructions. "Coast Guard, can anyone hear us?" Elias screamed their location, relief making his voice unsteady. Minutes later, the focused beam of a rescue flashlight found them. "We see you. Hold tight. We're setting up the stabilizing support now. There's a risk of secondary collapse, so move slowly when we give the word." Hope surged through the small space, vibrant and overwhelming. Elias helped Serena shift her weight carefully. They were going to make it. They had just found their future sculpted in the ruins of the past hour. A rescue worker, suspended from a line, was lowering a harness toward them, mere feet away. Elias reached up, his fingers brushing the woven straps. "Almost there, Serena," he whispered, squeezing her hand, a promise of sunlight and new beginnings echoing in the damp air. But the earth had one final, cruel card to play. It wasn't a quake this time, but a deep, guttural thud, the sound of the adjacent support column, already damaged by the initial tremor, finally surrendering to the unstable weight above. The world seemed to tilt. The segment of concrete shelf where Serena was resting gave way instantly. Elias lunged, grabbing her wrist with both hands, pulling her body weight against the debris. The rescuer screamed, retracting rapidly. "Hold on!" he roared, his muscles burning, fighting the gravitational pull. But the falling slab, massive and uncontrolled, twisted as it dropped. It didn't fall straight into the water. Instead, it swung sideways, scraping the remaining structural base. Elias felt a sharp, agonizing pressure across his chest, a secondary splinter of rebar tearing free and impaling him against the narrow gap. The pain was immediate and absolute, stealing his breath and blurring his vision. He held Serena's hand fiercely, even as his grip weakened. He looked down into her wide, terrified eyes, illuminated by the distant flashlights. "Elias!" she screamed, realizing his impossible position. He tried to speak the name she'd just given him a reason to live for, but only a ragged exhalation escaped. The connection, forged in darkness and yearning, snapped instantly. His eyes went vacant, his body heavy, and his useless hand slid from her grasp. Serena watched, paralyzed, as the weight of the collapsed wharf settled the remaining structure, wedging the love she just found, the purest, most honest connection of her life, into a permanent, inaccessible tomb of stone and water. The rescuers eventually pulled her out, weeping hysterically, her leg broken, but her heart shattered by the brief, terrifyingly real glimpse of the life that would never be. Serena was saved, condemned only to carry the silent weight of a stranger's last breath and the agonizing knowledge that fate had given them perfect clarity, only to devastate them both. She never fully recovered from the memory of the light draining from his eyes, the tragic irony of surviving to remember the love that died only minutes before freedom. The end.